I didn't know if we were going to be able to figure it out. I didn't know what might happen next and how bad it could be. The only thing worse than being there would have been not being there. Solving for joy is not just for the good days. Solving for joy happens in our darkest moments as well. We had each other. We laughed at the absurdity. We enjoyed the food. We appreciated the humans around us. You're listening to Solving for Joy. I'm your host, Dr. Chrissie Ott. Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the Solving for Joy podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Chrissie Ott, and today's episode is going to be about solving for joy in the aftermath of surviving a natural disaster. This is being recorded in the week after Hurricane Helene struck much of the southeastern United States and Florida in particular, and a week or so after Hurricane Milton also created vast destruction in many places, most notably western North Carolina and Florida. So we're going to start off with a little personal anecdote about how my family and I weathered, no pun intended, Tropical Storm Imelda in Houston almost exactly 5 years ago. And I hope you'll indulge me in sharing this story with just a medium amount of detail, because I think that it brings to light some of the really profoundly life-altering things that can happen in the midst of a natural disaster. And now that it's been 5 years, there are also things to laugh at in this natural disaster. There were horrible tragedies and amusements happening simultaneously. So I think that if we can solve for joy around these things that uproot us, that destabilize us, that cause so much suffering, it serves us. It serves us and it moves us closer to the concept of post-traumatic growth, rather than being haunted permanently by post-traumatic stress and the true stories of having been victimized by difficult circumstances, which, while incredibly true, are nothing new. And whatever we can suffer through and go through, whatever it is, we are not the first and we will not be the last. And so there is something grounding to me about connecting with the greater human family in these times of difficulty. And I hope that this tale and these connections to the pillars of post-traumatic growth are of service to people who listen to this, who are still recovering from this or the last or the one before storm, fire, tornado, flood, earthquake, etc. So, without further ado, let me set the stage for you. It's September 2019. My oldest brother, Tony, who is 21 years older than me, is living with my mom in Kingwood, Texas, which is a northeastern suburb of Houston, Texas. They lived together and it was a mutually beneficial arrangement. He needed some stability. She needed some physical help to continue to age in place. And at some point, one of my nephews also moved into the house. So I should tell you a little bit about each of their physical condition because it will become relevant later in the story. My mom at the time was 87 years old and had had 2 knee replacements, never really got very mobile afterwards. So very mobility impaired, on a walker, very slow moving. My brother, 67, with chronic lung disease from smoking, oxygen dependent, had only recently been placed on hospice. That's how bad his lung disease was. So he was very dependent on oxygen and he was expected to survive for up to or less than 6 more months. So this was brand new information. My nephew, who was living in the house, was recently released from prison and was in a wheelchair from a spinal cord injury from a gunshot wound. And you'll find out later in the story that he was also actively, in his addiction to heroin and methamphetamine and using on site with my mom and medically compromised brother. There was a fourth person in the household, and I don't need to use their name, but this lovely human was helping, just helping everybody get what they needed. She was also in an addiction cycle, and nevertheless was a great source of love and support to the people in my mom's household. So this is the setting. I am working as a nocturnal hospitalist in Portland at the time. And I get off of a night shift on a Monday morning and find out that my brother has been abusing his hospice medications. When you're on hospice, you often get benzos and opiates to deal with your pain and air hunger, and it's a very reasonable part of end-of-life care. But if you're a person with a tendency to abuse substances, you might not make great decisions on when and how to dose yourself with those medications. So this was the case for my dear brother. He had been falling and falling and falling and had been sleeping and not eating and was simply not doing well. And he was at risk of being kicked off of hospice, which would not have been good at all. So I find this out on Monday. I have to work one more night shift. I get off my night shift Tuesday morning at 7, and by 10 a.m., I'm on a flight to Texas. So I get there. I pick up dinner. I feed the family. I realize there are so many things we need to deal with. My brother has cashed out his retirement. He has $19,000, a gun, and a bunch of drugs sitting next to him in this very unstable atmosphere. He also has a truck that was in my name that I'd helped him purchase. There are many things on the to-do list when I get in town. First and foremost, stabilize my brother physically and medically, feed them, assess the situation, take the cash and get it into a bank account, all of these things, right? So the first night I get there, I feed them, I clean out the truck, I deliver chocolates from Oregon. Oh my gosh, his favorites from Made in Oregon. If you don't have them, it's like the most delicious chocolate covered cherries. Anyway, the next day, I'm just going to run down a list of some of the things, not all, but some of the things that were required on Wednesday. Okay? The flood is coming. I'm just telling you in advance what a full day Wednesday was because I think it's relevant. And it speaks to the capacity. I would have never in a million years thought one person could do this, much less me, in one day. But this is what happened. I wake up, I make everybody yogurt parfaits. I take $19,000 and his gun and the drugs with me in the car and get on the road. First of all, what? I'm driving around Houston, Texas in a truck with a backpack full of guns, drugs, and cash. It's not a good look, people. If I had been pulled over, I don't even know what would happen. I mean, I just chose not to visit that reality. I just was like, I have to take care of this. Okay, for first stop, try to take cash to bank. It's already starting to rain, and I remember getting just soaked going in and out of the bank and feeling super unsafe and insecure. Like I'm walking in and out of places unguarded with like $19,000 in cash. Couldn't easily get the cash into the bank. Long story. Ended up at a post office eventually where I got to put $1,000 at a time into each envelope and get a cash money order for $1,000 at a time that I could then deposit electronically. I mean, it just got really complicated. I went to CarMax. I waited around and got an offer on the truck because the truck was obviously needing to be sold immediately. I called and arranged for a mobile notary to come to the house so that we could do an advance directive and will for my brother, power of attorney. I went back to the grocery store. I made lentil stew and guacamole for the whole family. I took the person who was helping them. She could not see. Her glasses were so broken, and she could not function even to like count pills because she could not actually see. Took her to an optical shop, got her an exam, got her some glasses ordered. And then by 8:30, 9 p.m. that night, I dropped off the truck at the dealership and was like, whew, my brother's okay. Money's taken care of. I took the gun to my father-in-law. I was like, put this in your safe. I had taken care of all of the stuff, and I was like, all right, I can get back on the road. I can go home. I'm going to kindergarten parent night at my kid's school, which I was so stoked about. I couldn't imagine missing it. Like, this was a fast turnaround trip, I thought. All right. So now it's Thursday morning. It's raining cats and dogs, which is not that unusual for September in Houston and the Gulf Coast. Okay. I have a lift coming to get me at 7, like 45. They were supposed to pick me up. At 7:30, this gentleman who might be described as a tweaker shows up on the doorstep and asks if he can see my brother. And I'm like, no. Tony's asleep. He's like, who are you? I know everybody else in this house. I was like, oh, I'm his protective younger sister. What can I do for you? He's like, well, I just talked to him and I'm coming to pay him back this $100 that I owe him. I was like, dude, showing up unannounced before 8 o'clock in the morning when it's still dark outside in the pouring rain to pay somebody back $100 is not a thing. So please go away and don't come back. And then my brother was upset that I chased off his friend John, but it was clearly not a good situation. So this is the part where I realized I'm in a Breaking Bad episode, and I did not yet know that my Breaking Bad episode was about to be interrupted for natural disaster coverage. But here's what happened. My Lyft driver cancels, says can't get into the neighborhood. The entrance to the neighborhood is flooded. I try to get a second one in a larger car. Still can't get to me. So this is me realizing I can't get home today. I'm going to miss my kids' kindergarten parent-teacher night. Like, my heart breaks. By 8:15, I start taking pictures of the street because it's covered with water. And this is the moment where I begin to realize we're stranded. We may need an exit strategy because I have someone in a wheelchair who I didn't know at the time had terrible pressure wounds. Someone who is dependent on oxygen. So if we lose power, we didn't have a generator. And my mom, who needs a lot of assistance, and 3 animals. So that was 8:15. I call for a strategic evacuation. By 9:30, a very tall, kind firefighter arrived. He was like 6'4", and I only mention this because when he waded out to the truck in the middle of the street that he was hoping to evacuate us in, the water was already up to his hip, and he was so tall. My family declined his invitation to evacuate at that time because it would have been into the open back of a garbage truck, and we just couldn't all see eye to eye about how we were going to get everybody up into that truck with just one person evacuating us. And, good fortune, bad fortune, who knows? I was overruled and they said, we're not leaving, or at least we're not leaving yet. So within 15 minutes of that kind man leaving, water ingressed the house. It came up through the garage and then through the doorways. And that was the most bizarre thing. If you've ever been inside a house when water, like significant water, comes in, rugs begin to float and become their own tripping hazard. And this is like murky water. This is like there's sewage backing up in the drains. Between about 10 and 11:30, the water in the house was up to almost my knee, so almost to the electrical outlets, but not quite. And that's when we turned the power off, and we had Tony on his portable oxygen, which is just terrifying. Our very large trash cans in the neighborhood were just floating down the street like little toys. That's how much water. Like, it was a river in the street. I know if you've been in it, you know what I'm talking about. If you have not ever been impacted by a flood of that significance, like, you really begin to get a grasp for how small and insignificant we are, and how the forces of nature and water in particular can just change the landscape in an instant. So by 12:40, a police department inflatable boat came to our front door, and there was a pontoon boat waiting in the middle of the street. So the inflatable boat ferried our family to the pontoon boat. And this included a dog in a crate, a cat in a crate. There was a third animal that was hiding. The policemen had to lift my very large nephew and his wheelchair into the inflatable boat. I mean, all of these feats were just, they would stop you in your tracks. Like any one of these things was just bizarre. In the accompanying material and in the show notes, you'll see a strange selfie. I felt the need to document this moment because it was so surreal. And it was emotional. I remember my mom just crying out, I don't want to leave my things. I don't want to leave my house. Um, it was very, it was very disturbing. But we got to the pontoon boat and the family looked like a family of wet cats. Like they were just soaked to the bone. We pontoon boat through the neighborhood for about 30 minutes to get to the back of an army truck. And we passed by these gullies with rapids. I mean, white rapids in the neighborhood, guys. It was insane. We get to the back of an army truck. Neighborhood volunteers in waders are helping get my mom and brother and nephew up into the back of this canvas covered army truck. I can't say enough thank yous to the people who volunteer in these situations, families, kids, first responders, volunteers, the Cajun Army, or Cajun Navy, everybody out there just trying to do good for one another. Was devastating and so profoundly touching at the same time. So the pontoon boat took us to the army truck. The army truck took us to the Red Cross evacuation center at a community center. More incredible volunteers feeding us like the most delicious breakfast taco I've ever had in my entire life was that day. And there's a whole list of angels I will mention later on, but so many different personal connections were made through this time. And that's one of the touch points as we go through the features of post-traumatic growth. This was a horrible trauma to my family in particular. They lost their home. They were not able to ever return and spend another night in that house. However, because there were inner and outer resources for each of us at different levels, we were able to do the next skillful thing, which for me was move my mom and my brother into my house in Portland within a week. It took a lot of creative wisdom. It took a lot of community support. It took a lot of thinking thoughts I've never thought before, like how do I get a portable oxygen concentrator on an airplane for a one-way trip? How much does that cost? Who's going to pay for it? Who's in my community that I could reach out to for airline miles to help my family members get a first class seat because they needed the space and the attention because they were in pretty bad shape? How do I find a 5-day respite stay for my brother in a skilled nursing facility while we cull the contents of my mom's house and prepare to move him across the country? I mean, these are questions that I know people in real life are grappling with right now. Moving yourself, moving your kids, that is one horrible, tough thing. But when you also have to move and respond to the needs of your infirm relatives or your elderly, fragile folks, it brings a whole nother dimension. And it's easy to think collapsing thoughts or I can't handle this thoughts. So I want to normalize that will enter. Joy is not the first thing in your mind, but you're trying to get to okay. You're trying to get back to okay so that you can maybe experience joy again in the future. And so I want to pause for a moment and bring us to the concept of post-traumatic growth. There are a number of resources online. Bouldercrest.org is one. If you just Google Centers for Post-Traumatic Growth, you will find really astounding resources out there. But one of the topics that we touch on in 12 by 12 when we're orienting to our past with love and purpose is the concept of post-traumatic growth. And that is, as it sounds like, when you have gone through something traumatic, that typically means that it has changed your life view in some way, right? It is a highly challenging, stressful event. And we want to set up conditions where we can harvest wisdom, insight, and even service for ourselves and others in the aftermath of a crisis like this. When we do get to experience post-traumatic growth, there are positive changes in self-perception, in interpersonal relationships, in our overall life philosophy, and these can lead to increased self-awareness, self-confidence, and a more open attitude toward other humans, a deeper appreciation of life and the discovering of new possibilities. It can happen naturally and spontaneously if the inner resources and the outer circumstances are aligned, and trauma is not incredibly ongoing. But it also can be supported, or we can intentionally move toward post-traumatic growth by finding good fit therapy or by just having an awareness of these possibilities. So some of the common features of people who experience a period of growth following a crisis or a traumatic event are the following. One, they are surprised by their own strength and the strength of people around them. They're surprised by personal strength, how they were able to handle a difficult situation. So there's a growing concept of self-capacity. Two, there is a new awareness of possibility. There is adaptation to demand and innovation, which I would say is a way of opening your mind creatively to other outcomes, things you didn't know you were going to ever see, experience, or choose. Three, turning toward others, even overcoming polarizing differences to help one another. It's kind of like a foxhole mentality. We've been in battle together, and it doesn't matter that we're voting for different people. To call back to last week's episode, it doesn't matter that you're from here and I'm from there. It doesn't matter that I have this level of education and you have that level of education. It doesn't matter that I'm queer and you're straight. It doesn't matter, because what matters is that you need a boat and I have a boat and we're going to get you out of there. Right? Fourth, appreciation for life. After one of these difficulties, we notice frequently a newfound sense of gratitude for the everyday, for what we already had. The things that we're suddenly losing or at risk of losing, what we have suddenly becomes so desirable after having perhaps being taken for granted. An appreciation for our well-being, for our previous home, for our old set of problems, right? It just grows our appreciation and gratitude for what it was like before. And last but not least, fifth, spiritual growth. When a trauma or crisis disrupts our core beliefs about what is possible, what is true, what is right, we get to return, or we are forced to return to the big existential questions about life, meaning, cosmology, and we may become more attuned to this than we were in the period immediately preceding the difficulty or trauma. So, what I have often said, looking back on this time with Tropical Storm Imelda and my family, the only thing worse than being there would have been not being there. It sucked being there, guys. It was scary. I didn't know if we were going to be able to figure it out. I didn't know what might happen next and how bad it could be. But I was so glad to be there to be of service and participate, because had I not been there, I do not know what would have happened to my family. I literally cannot imagine how this would have gone down. So my thoughts and wishes are with all of you and the families and friends that you know that are going through something difficult right now. And I want to leave you with this. Solving for joy is not just for the good days. Solving for joy happens in our darkest moments as well. We had each other. We laughed at the absurdity. We enjoyed the food. We appreciated the humans around us. And that reminds me, I want to just say the names of some of the people who I considered angels in the path during that time. Jane Ellen Heath, if you are out there somewhere, thank you for sitting next to me on that airplane. Thank you for telling me to take care of myself during this ordeal, not even knowing what we were in for. To Ashley, you know who you are. To Brian Wasim, the car dealer, CarMax that day, an Arab Israeli who had this profound conversation with me about the importance of just being decent and good to people. To Robin, the notary who squeezed us in after I told her the whole story and how urgent it was. To Miss Tony, who supported my mom and brother for years. To Supervisor Mason at Harris County 911, who gave me her personal cell phone number to make sure that we had a lifeline out of that house. To my cousin Whitney and her sweet husband JD, who ultimately came to rescue us from our second evacuation spot and let us stay with them for days while we were cleaning out the house. To the strangers who fed us and helped us clean out the house and brought us more supplies. To Adam Bayer especially, and to Dana Bayer, who, having survived Hurricane Harvey, knew exactly what we needed and brought gloves and water and paper towels and garbage bags galore. To Celeste, to Bob, who let me borrow his Jeep. Oh my gosh. This Jeep was on a lift, guys, and I tried to get my mom into it. I mentioned mobility. I need you to know about the snapshot of me trying to shove my mom in from behind to the back seat of this Jeep that she could not get into. I can't believe we ever got her into that Jeep. It was hilarious and traumatizing all by itself. And to all of the beautiful people who donated airline points to help get them across the country, to the people that built a ramp at my house before we came home and had hot food waiting for us and had rearranged the entire house, and to the Providence Hospice people who supported my brother so beautifully for the next 6 months of his life. Because of the kindness of all of these people, I will never be the same. Even when my cynicism flares or my cognitive distortions and shortcutting flare, this will have always happened to me. These people will have always have helped and stepped up, been there, created a meal train to support us for that first 6 weeks with them in the house. I am eternally grateful, and I would never wish this on anyone. But I can wish this for no one, and at the same time find a little bit of gratitude for what came out of it, that this suffering really did get transformed. And I hope that there is transformation in the suffering that is happening to all of the victims of this natural disaster today, and that this lays out a little bit of an inspirational template for some. There will be some show notes with resources in them. May you continue solving for joy for yourself, for others, and if you have the means, we will also include a way for you to support those who are going through this incredible difficulty right now. Thank you so much for being with us, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time on Solving for Joy. Hey guys, join me next time for an in-depth conversation about the occupational distress syndrome we abbreviate as burnout. There's so many things that we already have lived experience of, but we haven't necessarily heard languaged well. I want to tell you, first of all, it's not your fault, even if it is your problem, and resilience is not the only answer. I want to take a moment to acknowledge my incredible team. Our music today is by Dennis Kishcook, cover photography by the talented Shelby Bracken. This podcast is produced by the amazing Kelsey Vaughn. Post-production and more are handled by Alyssa Wilkes and my executive assistant, Rachel Osborne. A special shout out to my steadfast friend and director of operations, Denise Crane, and to the one and only loyal champion #1 fan, Suzanne Sanchez. Thanks again for tuning in. May we continue caring for ourselves and others, and may we continue solving for joy.